You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Welcome to the Capitalist Corner, folks. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and I am here all by my lonesome yet again. Hopefully today will be the last day I'm alone. I guess we'll figure that out as the time goes by. I mean, yesterday I was here with Mark, but on my other shows I was alone. Now today I'm here alone. Whatever. Look, this is the Rational Alternative channel. On this channel we have numerous shows. We have a lot of content. I hope you enjoy it. Check it out, share it, do all that stuff. We got a lot to talk about, so I'm kind of going to just jump right in. But remember, we do like the super chats and the super stickers. So the House of Representatives passed legislation that would to make Trump end his activities in Iran, to end the war in Iran. They voted to rein him in. Specifically, the U.S. House passed a measure yesterday directing President Donald Trump to end the war with Iran or get approval from Congress. The vote passed 215 to 208, with 4 Republicans joining Democrats in the rebuke. So this really, I mean, it's symbolic largely. It would have to pass in the Senate in order to compel Trump to do anything. And I've heard arguments that even in that case, he could just veto it. I've also seen that he couldn't. I don't know the applicable law, and I simply didn't have enough time to go digging for all that amongst all the other things through which I was digging. But I personally like this. I like the fact that the Congress is at least taking a step to assert itself. What I don't like are the likely reasons why. And what I mean by that is I think it's partisan. I don't think the same people who voted to do this would have done it if it was Obama in the White House. I think that they mostly just don't like Trump or don't like Republicans, and that's just tribalism. It's not principled leadership. I, of course, can't know that. It's speculation on my part, but I don't like it. Now, I called this, I don't like, if I'm right in my speculation, I don't like their motivations. I call this Iran fatigue, because I got to tell you, I'm sick of it. I really am. I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the obfuscations. I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of reading about it. But, I mean, I do kind of have to talk about it because I'm running a news program here. Nevertheless, it does get a bit much. Now, Trump said, they asked Trump, how do you define ceasefire? And Trump said, I'd say in that part of the world, ceasefire is when you're shooting in a more moderate manner. So evidently a ceasefire doesn't mean ceasefire as most people would think of it. It just means whatever, I guess, Trump says it means. We've got another story, of course. Marco Rubio repeated his claim that the war is over. So the war is over. There's a ceasefire. Trump maintains his threats. The Iranians are celebrating that they've destroyed the United States. Then, Trump has said he won't break the truce unless I'll get to that in a second. So a reporter said to Trump, you said last week that the U.S. would go in and dig out of the buried nuclear material in coordination with them. Did Iran actually agree to that? Trump says, well, it depends on what day it is, on what day you're talking about. But he says it's overrated, and he says that he is the one that overrated it. But he then goes on to say that it is a must. Unfortunately, Trump also, I think I said this, that he won't break the ceasefire unless U.S. troops are killed. But so this was a group of headlines in Newsmax today. Now, I think Persephone will get these articles out to you. There's a bunch of them today, and I think you'll see them. So anyways, here's the headline. Trump won't break Iran truce unless U.S. troops are killed. That's the first headline. Next one. The Iran foreign minister said there's no tangible progress. Rubio says the war is over. Meanwhile, Iran has hit Kuwait, and the U.S. has struck near Hormuz. And then, of course, we've already discussed the House okayed the war powers curb. So we have the president who's hopeful that things are going to go well, says he's overstated the need to get the uranium, says he won't break the truce unless the Iranians kill Americans, says a ceasefire means you're just shooting at each other moderately. The Iranian foreign minister says that no tangible progress has been made. And Rubio says that the war is over. Meanwhile, Iran is still bombing its neighbors. In other words, you've got what in technical language is called a good old-fashioned clusterfuck. And then you had this. I do think that this is perhaps interesting to point out here. Jerome Brook shared this. He said, this is Trump's victory. Iran's supreme leader, Mojtaba Khomeini, says in a written statement read out by a cleric that the enemy is experiencing a meaningful and profound humiliation in the field, in the streets, and is now focused on trickery. Okay, first of all, it's sad that we're in a situation where we have to doubt what our own leadership is telling us and think that perhaps the Iranians are telling the truth. That's sad in and of itself. But the pure spin that's going on, the changing in objectives from the start of the war, the way the war has been conducted, it's just like Nicole Hingle says her head is spinning. So is mine. Katrin Kohler, thank you for the €5 super sticker. Greatly appreciated. We do really appreciate them. Meanwhile, there is a dearth of folks who will just say, look, this was a mistake. They still say we need to support the war, or yes, maybe it's bad, but it's the best chance we have. It just ignores, that position ignores so much. It's as if the only thing in the entire context is a dangerous Iran, and therefore anything that you can do to weaken it in any possible way is good. And you don't look at the other side of the ledger in the cost-benefit, risk-benefit assessment. So I've done this before, and I'm going to do it again because I think it's important. I got my new tat, by the way. I don't know if you can, you probably can't see it. Doesn't matter. Anyways, so look, to start with, you've got a constitutional violation. I know other presidents have violated the Constitution, but further erosions are not good, and it's certainly not good to defend them. The War Powers Resolution, the time is now up on that. That's more further erosion of the rule of law. You have our credibility with allies. Trump yelling at the allies, threatening the allies, of course, telling the Iranian people themselves that help is on the way. There was this idea there was going to be a regime change in a new free Iran. That not even in the talks anymore, of course. The people of Iran have got to be like, are you fucking kidding me? You've had repeated threats from the president of the United States that he's going to obliterate these people, send them to kingdom come, and then doesn't do it. So for the deterrence people, and I'm a believer in deterrence myself, so I can count myself amongst them. I just understand that repeatedly threatening something and not doing it is not a deterrent, especially when you're dealing with homicidal, suicidal maniacs. Trump thinks he can negotiate with the Iranians. Trump has put pressure. Now, all the, a lot of these people are really big supporters of Israel, right? Well, what about the pressure that Trump is putting on Israel to dial it down and not take out their enemies, the enemies that it said are existential threats? What about the rise in prices that we are happening, in America in terms of gas and other prices that are coming down the pike in terms of fertilizer and other whatever else is going to be impacted by the disruption in the supply chains? What about that? What about the whole world seeing this thing take place of a president who is constantly saying, giving different objectives, saying the objectives have been met. We're going to blow them out of the water. The Strait of Hormuz is actually open. No, it's open. They better open it. I mean, it's silly. We're looking to obliterate their nuclear abilities. We've already obliterated their nuclear capability. We're going to destroy their entire missile operation. We've already done that, except we haven't. I mean, there's so many things that are going wrong here that are bad for the United States of America. But we're just going to focus on Iran's bad, right? So Razi Ginsburg said 2 more years, 2.5 more years, Iran might have the nuclear bomb by then if Trump didn't do anything. Okay. I get that that's what you say, and what I will just say in response is, again, look at the U.S. intelligence assessments, look at the intelligence assessments of everybody, virtually every country in the world. I think there were 2, if I'm not mistaken. It were Austria and Israel. I might be wrong on that have said that, no, they're pursuing a nuclear weapon. But when other intelligence agencies looked at their raw intelligence, said, no, they're not pursuing a nuclear weapon. Now, does that mean they're not? No, of course not. Of course, it doesn't mean they're not. They were enriching uranium to 60%. Of course, they weren't doing that until Trump pulled out of the deal. But, okay, so that's true that they were enriching to 60%. That's concerning, to say the least, right? But to pivot from that to they could have a bomb in 2.5 years, while technically it's accurate, I would just say it's highly speculative to say something like that. And it's certainly in regard to the technology to deliver it's not there. So you're violating the Constitution. You're doing all these things based on speculation that goes counter to what the intelligence assessments say. Oh, God, it's exhausting, isn't it? It really is exhausting. And the interesting thing to me is there's strong cases to go to war with Iran. There really are. Look, they did attack Americans in Beirut in the 80s. They did attack America. They did try to kill Americans on American soil. They have participated in bombing, civilian Americans in hotels overseas. They did, aid in killing Americans in Iraq. They have done these things. They are an evil regime. They do chant, as everyone says, death to America. But why not just make the case to go to war based on the facts? Why make this claim, well, they've been at war with us since 79, as if that just came out of a vacuum and they just decided in 79 we're going to start going after Americans. If you want to convince people of your position, you don't leave out facts. You don't negate context. You don't obliterate history, right? There's still a case for going to war with Iran, but it sure as fuck wasn't imminent. And it sure as hell isn't worth violating the Constitution, violating the War Powers Resolution, trusting Trump to execute this thing, degrading our standing on the world stage, getting people to take us less seriously, not more, increase in national debt, destruction of our own weapons arsenals, rising prices here in America. If you're going to advocate for war, mention everything. Bring everything into the equation, including the fact that we are now more than 3 months into a war that we were guaranteed would be ended in 4 to 6 weeks. Okay. That's all I have to say about this. And I am utterly fatigued by it. And just for the simple out there, being opposed to an unconstitutional war conducted by a narcissistic imbecile is not the same as supporting Iran. So let me say it extra slow. I don't support Iran. I think they're an evil, evil regime. If the entire regime died, I would think that was a good thing. All things remaining equal. But that's not what we're talking about here. I understand when making arguments and you want to prey on emotion and you don't want to think critically, it's easy to say, look, they support Iran. No, I do not. That's my take. All right, so New York, this is an interesting, and I got to say that I'm not going to say my position's evolving on it, but New York has the House and legislature, although it has not been signed into law just yet. Let me make sure I find it here. It's at the bottom. Okay, so the New York legislature, they've passed the Senate and the House have passed a bill that removes terms like mother, father, and paternity from state child custody, domestic relations, and family court laws and replaces them with gender-neutral alternatives like gestating parent, non-gestating parent, and parentage. The bill replaces mother with gestating parent and father with non-gestating parent in official state documents and legal proceedings. Paternity and filiation cases are officially changed to parentage, and the bill has passed both the Senate and the House. So on its face, to me, this just looks like a bunch of woke nonsense, right? I think that is the sort of, that's the prima facie case. That's what's showing. So I've gotten some pushback from people that I respect that are smart, and they say, no, it's looking to clarify laws, and they give examples. So let me just give you an example. If you have a homosexual couple, male, let's say it's male, and they've adopted a child, and now they're going through custody, there is no mother there. There's only two fathers, right? So the idea, but here's the problem there. Saying parentage in that case doesn't solve anything. Saying non-gestating parent doesn't solve anything because they're both non-gestating. I said, well, why not just use father one and father two? Okay. If you have a case of lesbians and one of the lesbians gave birth to the child, so, she's the biological mother and the other isn't, they say, well, you see, that's a case. So you'd have gestating parent and non-gestating parent. That's just one instance among these. I don't understand why you couldn't then just say biological mother as opposed to mother, as opposed to a gender neutral term. It seems like that's not the real motivation to me. I mean, I've looked through the bill. I've read a few articles and I've been engaging in arguments. I still could change my mind on this. I'm just telling you where I am and how I'm processing it. Also, what about the case where there's two mothers that adopted a kid? Well, then again, you have the situation where neither one of them gestated. So what's the issue? They've changed paternity now to parentage. So parentage, I guess, is I did a little digging. It's a legal concept, and it can apply to a lot more things than just paternity or just biological relations. It refers to legal parent. And so as I was digging through this with Claude, arguing a little bit, and I asked him, okay, Claude, him, it, whatever. I said, but the bill has changed paternity to parentage in all cases. So what happens during a paternity test? What would you say? And it came back and conceded. It said, well, given the language of the law, I guess you would have to say it's a parentage test, no longer paternity test. It doesn't seem to me that this is aimed at clarity. It seems it's aimed at gender neutral terms to placate a lot of people. That's what it appears to me as. It doesn't appear to me like it's anything to clear anything up. Again, look, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the history of the law over there in New York. I don't know the whole lot about their domestic law, relating to parents and children and whatnot. I'll readily concede that. But what I do know is that on its face, this seems like woke bullshit. Right. And by the way, I'm pro gay. I think I'm fine with people being gay. I'm not anti-trans. I'm fine with people being trans. I think they should have all the rights that the rest of us have. So I don't have an issue with any of that. But this just seems silly to me. It seems ridiculous. And furthermore, what it does is it gives ammunition to bigots and idiots. And I hate, let me just say this. I hate when the idiots get something where that they can hide behind. The idiots and bigots. So somebody that really just hates gays and hates trans people now get to say, but look what they're doing here. Look what they're doing to the language. Look how they're changing things. And what do you say? I mean, you can try to dive deep into the law like it's been done, today when people were talking to me, and that sometimes is appropriate. I'm not saying it's not. And say, well, there's reasons for it because of this, and this, and this. Okay. Is it necessary, though? Is it necessary to refer to gestating persons or non-gestating parent, whatever, or parentage instead of paternity? I mean, by that, why not just keep paternity, but in cases where you're not actually testing for paternity, then use parentage, right? I mean, like, why replace? You could use an addition if you had to, but it seems to me that's really not the issue here. It's about smuggling this shit into law, smuggling it into the culture so it becomes entrenched. And look, I mean, does it really matter? I don't know. I don't really care. I don't, honestly, like, I mean, first, I'm not a parent, but is it really a big deal? I don't know, but I think what it's emblematic of or what it's indicative of is a big deal. I think that what's being tried and what's being attempted is a big deal. I think that when you try to change the meaning of words and you try to change the common understanding and then you get mad on top of it when other people don't know or won't adopt, that's problematic, right? So I'll keep looking into this and keep trying to learn about it. And if I change my mind, I'll certainly say so. I don't think that everybody that supports it is being dishonest. I don't think that the people that argued with me today on Facebook are being dishonest. I think they're mistaken. And I think that they are looking at this very much out of context as far as what the left is up to. The left side of the political aisle has been up to and tries to do. And, I think it's dangerous. Like I said, maybe I'll change my mind, but I'm telling you what I think as of 12:22 p.m. Eastern Time on June 4th, 2026. What's this here? Who just texted me? Someone just texted me. CVS. Who gives a damn what CVS has to say? So, speaking of the left, and this isn't in the title, so this would go under the more section that we have here in the title. There was an article this morning in Rein magazine. Let me back up and see if I can find it. New study finds average college professors only slightly less left than Bernie Sanders. And there's, I did a bit of digging. That's based on a study. Maybe the study's not so good, and some of these studies are poor. But look, the bottom line is this. The overwhelming majority of academia, meaning the professors, are left-leaning. They're to the left of center. I'm thinking about this, and part of it is, if you look at, for instance, what conservatives believe in, the conservatives in this country tend to be, at least the popular ones, I don't know about the academic ones, but are very religious. So it seems to me that the more educated you would be, the less religious you would be. That's a hypothesis or speculation on my part. I'm just saying it's one possibility for why you wouldn't see an abundance of conservatives in academia. There's also the self-selection problem, meaning that perhaps conservatives just aren't that interested in academia. But nonetheless, what is the concern here? Well, the concern is that kids are being indoctrinated. Now, indoctrinated doesn't have to be explicit, right? It doesn't have to be you just give them left-wing books to read and tell them this is the truth, America's evil, the West sucks, that kind of thing, right? But the way you skew the educations, the way the conversations in class go, this can have an effect. again, the kids are free agents. They can go find out on their own. They can do their own studies. They're not, slaves to this stuff. But nonetheless, I mean, you can't deny that it'll have an impact. So, and then, by the way, I'm not saying there's anything illegal about it. I do think there's something wrong with government funding colleges, but I would think that if they were funding universities that are entirely in line with my personal ideology, I wouldn't want the government funding it, because the government funding it is not in line with my personal ideology. Right? So, but nevertheless, so you do have a lot of people learning this left-wing stuff, anti-capitalist stuff. The West is evil stuff. So that makes it more incumbent on us, those who are pro-enlightenment, pro-reason, pro-capitalism, to really keep making the case. I like the idea of Charlie Kirk going to colleges and debating with the kids, although I don't like his, the message that he was putting out there by and large. I thought it was bad. But maybe we can get some folks to go out and do that. Maybe I can do it. I wouldn't be opposed to going and arguing with college kids. I just don't have the resources really to do it. But there are people out there with the resources who are on our side, broadly speaking. Maybe they, some stars can go out there and do that sort of thing. To be honest, what I would really be interested in knowing, and I did try to sift through this morning, but it was a mess. I would like to know, broadly speaking, on a deeper level, not only on a deeper level, some more on the closer to the ground level, but the epistemology, the epistemological orientation of the professors. Are they closer to Aristotle or Plato? Kant, pragmatism, nominalism? There's never been any studies from what I could find this morning to indicate these sort of things. Are they, broadly speaking, pro-reason in the sense that I'm using the term as a reality-oriented faculty that can give us knowledge about reality, not about appearances or not about the the phenomenal world as opposed to the noumenal world, but is reason a faculty that can give us truth about reality? Is that its job? I would like to know how many philosophers or how many professors, rather, in the various, orientations, what their epistemology is. Really, are they rationalists? Are they empiricists? Are they logical positivists? Or whatever. I would like to know that. That, I think, would be far more helpful than the left-right dimension, because left and right is way too binary in my opinion, because there's better options than both. Objectivism, of course, being one of them. But yeah, so I would like to know their orientation toward reason. I would also like to know specifically how they view American history. I would guess that's left-leaning, but capitalism specifically. That is probably out there. If somebody would Google that, if I had Persephone, I would have her do it. But can somebody in the audience do that so that I can just keep yapping here? Google what percentage of American professors show I'll just do it. What the hell? I'll just do it, folks. You've convinced me. You didn't really convince me, but I convinced myself. Let me just see this here. Okay. What percentage of American professors have a favorable view of capitalism? This is the type of thing. Like I said, I tried to find out the epistemological orientation. That didn't go very well. So this is what we got here. While major polling organizations like Gallup and Pew Research frequently track public and student opinions on economic systems, there is no definitive modern statistical survey that measures the exact percentage of all American college professors who hold a favorable view of capitalism. Faculty ideological and political leanings. Comprehensive demographic studies of academia, such as the foundational Gross and Simmons study, the social and political views of American professors, indicate that while the professoriate leans significantly liberal. A strict rejection of capitalist models is a minority position. The Marxist identification is low. Socialism still nudges ahead. In that same survey, 54% of students reported hearing their professors speak favorably about socialism. So no studies done on that. So we have no studies done. We have no, Jim, just tell us the answer. We have no studies done on the philosophical orientation, the epistemological orientation of professors, nor of the professor's view of capitalism. And to me, those answers would be far more interesting than the left-right binary. If there's a consensus of academic philosophers about what, Jim? I don't know what you're referring to because I'm here yapping, so I don't know. It's high UV in Connecticut. We've got 90 degree weather. I got to go for a walk, or I want to go for a walk, but I've got this new ink and I don't want the sun hitting it. So I've got to figure out something to do. Maybe I got to cover it up. The new tattoo, by the way, let's see if I can get you to see it here. Maybe. The new tattoo is QED, Quod Erat Demonstrandum. It means that which has been demonstrated. It's also basically the thing has been proven. It's what at the end of a philosophical argument you would say when the thing is over, basically. The reason I got what made me get this tattoo is, and I've been wanting another tattoo, but I haven't been able to figure out something that I would get. I like to get stuff that's meaningful to me. Like, I mean, since I've been out of prison, I got egoist tattooed on my left forearm. I got the self-made man on the right forearm. And so now I got QED. So what happened is I had an interaction with somebody the other day on X, and the person told me that homosexuals were demonic, and that I was stupid for not recognizing that. So what I told her was, I said, you believe in demons, QED. And then she comes back and says, what the fuck does that mean? And I got a chuckle out of that because I'm like, you're online telling people how stupid they are, and yet I use QED. You don't know what it means. And by the way, it doesn't mean you're stupid because you don't know QED. But all you got to do is look up QED. You Google QED. It comes right up what it is and what it means. Oh, atheism, scientific realism are, they say, consensus. Deontology versus consequentialism, no consensus. Oh, wow. That is interesting, Jim. I would have to agree with Jim that is an interesting finding. Okay, so where was I going with this? Anyway, so I think we can all agree, all as smart people anyway, that it'd be much better to know the philosophy or the epistemological orientation of professors, their view of capitalism, than simply put them into a left-right binary. And also those of us who advocate for reason, freedom, capitalism, individual rights, we need to continue to do so to combat the anti-intellectualism that is in academia. So what's her name here? I think it's Kaylee, I want to say Kaylee McEnany. Yes, Kaylee McEnany. Kaylee McEnany says that somebody claimed we're not a Christian nation, and she says go read what the original 13 colonies had to say. So that's precisely what I did. I went and I looked all this up this morning, and again, you can read it. And so of the original 13 colonies, 11 of the original 13 colonies required religious tests for holding office around the time of the Revolution. Only New York and Virginia omitted religious tests for civil servants in their initial post-independent constitutions. Okay, so that's just one of the things. But we also have this. A lot of the states, I want to get the exact thing here. A lot of the states ended that very, very quickly. Within 1 to 10 years after ratification, a lot of the states ended it. And by the middle of the 1800s, most states had all of that gone. South Carolina removed its religious test by 1790, Delaware by 1792, Pennsylvania by 1790. But I would argue that all of that is irrelevant. And here's why. When you're talking about the founding of the country, you are talking about the United States Constitution. You are not talking about what individual states were doing. You're talking about the unification and the principles under which we were unified. Now, that tells a vastly different story. Article 6, United States Constitution. Article 6, Clause 3, the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by one oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. So under the United States refers to federal stuff. So there can be no religious test for public office. So Miss McEnany left that out of her little diatribe. Okay, we also have, and I'll just go over here because I have it. Let me open this up. We also have the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So in addition to Article 6, which says there can be no oath of office, we also have the First Amendment, which said there can be no establishment of a religion in this country. Then we have in 1797 the famous Treaty of Tripoli, signed by John Adams and unanimously ratified by the United States Senate. As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries. So we've got Article 6, Clause 3. We've got the First Amendment. We also have John Adams in 1797 explicitly stating that the United States is in no sense a Christian country. We also have this. Two Messrs. Nehemiah Dodge, Ephraim Robbins, and Stephen S. Nelson, a committee of the Danbury Baptist Association of the state of Connecticut. Hey, my home. Gentlemen, the affectionate sentiments of esteem and approbation which you are so good as to express towards me on behalf of the Danbury Baptist Association give me the highest satisfaction. My duties dictate a faithful and zealous pursuit of the interest of my constituents, and in proportion as they are persuaded of my fidelity to those duties, the discharge of them becomes more and more pleasing. Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only, not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Adhering to this expression of the supreme will of the nation in behalf of the rights of conscience, I shall see with sincere satisfaction the progress of those sentiments which tend to restore to man all his natural rights, convinced he has no natural right in opposition to his social duties. I reciprocate your kind prayers for the protection and blessing of the common Father and Creator of man, and tender you for yourselves and your religious association assurances of my high respect and esteem. Thomas Jefferson, January 1st, 1802, letter to the Danbury Baptist. So now let's go back over this yet again. Article 6, Clause 3, no religious tests for public office. First Amendment. No establishment of religion. Treaty of Tripoli, 1797, signed by John Adams unanimously agreed to by the United States Senate. Said the United States was in no sense founded as a Christian nation. Thomas Jefferson, letter to the Danbury Baptist, 1802. Wall of separation between church and state. Mind you, the word God is nowhere to be found in the United States Constitution. Even the Declaration of Independence does not favor a Christian interpretation of religion. It does not mention Jesus. It mentions God. Very, very generically. And given the deist inclinations of many of the people of that time, I would have to say you can't just ascribe that to Christianity. Now, I'm not trying to ignore the fact that the majority of the people were Christians, that their culture was shaped by Christianity, that the Western culture has been impacted by Christianity, that the United States was impacted by Christianity. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is that the United States is not a Christian nation, meaning that our government is not to be favoring Christianity, legislating in favor of Christianity, giving religious tests, mandating 10 commandments in schools, that sort of thing. That's what I am talking about here. So the people that want to claim it's a Christian nation, I'm afraid in order to do that, you really, really, really need to ignore a vast amount of history, cherry pick data, and drive toward the conclusion that you want. Akira Felix says the founding fathers respected reason so much that the First Amendment directly contradicts the First Commandment. Nice. Mr. Deagle says there's a big push among religionists to make people think that the Dark Ages never happened and that the USA is a Christian nation. Kira Felix says that's been happening for at least 10 years. Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro wrote books about it. I couldn't imagine defending the Dark Ages. Those guys are gross. All right. So let's see. Are there any questions? Do we have anything that you folks would like to talk about? I mean, I've run through the topics. Again, this is what happens when I'm by myself. I rip through them, and that's it. So I hope if anybody's got any questions about today's subject matter, I'd be happy to, of course, discuss it. I am here trying to be a beacon of reason, as always, for those of you who want it. We might as well do a quick advertisement. This is for those of you coming to us by means of X, the channel on YouTube is the Rational Alternative. This specific show every weekday, noon Eastern Time, is the Capitalist Corner. At 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time today, we'll be doing Everyday Ethics, as we do every weekday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we do Crime, Corrections, and Culture at 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time. And on the weekends, we do Capitalist Corner Weekend Edition, 12 noon Eastern Time on Saturday. But we've got all kinds of stuff on the channel, by the way. I mean, we've got, if you become a member, you get access to special content, videos that Mark and I put out there. You will also have soon other shows that we do. Okay, let's see here. We got some questions. Odd that those who profess that the U.S. is a Christian nation, from Rob Rankenheath. How would I define woke? Okay, so how would I define woke? I have to differentiate kind of between the history of the meaning of the term. Initially, it had to do with, black racial consciousness, being aware of what they were dealing with and what they were going with. Today, what I think of in terms of woke is people who want to believe that they're cutting edge in terms of awareness. And I think that awareness always goes left. They think that, that they're aware of distinctions that nobody else has ever made, that they're aware of truths that nobody else has ever come to, that they are aware of moral principles that people are ignoring or avoiding. I don't know if that is a definition, but I think that's what you have. And it always steers toward left-wing causes, far left-wing in terms of Marxist theory, conflict theory, or critical theory that came out of the Frankfurt School, that sort of thing. I don't know that there's a specific definition, Mr. Deagle, but I certainly know what they're talking about. I mean, I can point it out. I can tell you some of its descriptions. I just don't know the defining characteristic of it. Why did I change the name of the show, Michael? Because when I originally wanted to call it Crime, Corrections, and Culture, I was thinking of prison culture, the culture within prisons, but the title doesn't really indicate that. And so I thought, and I didn't know how crime, criminals, and prison culture, well, that wouldn't have the CCC. So I wanted to keep the CCC in there because the alliterative, I think, is great. And I thought, well, how can I keep the alliterative and still have the main focus of the show? And I figured crime, the criminal act, criminals, the people who commit them, and corrections, the people that are supposed to be fixing the criminals. Akira Felix, do I think the supporters will just pretend they never support it or double down? I think that it's going to be both, and I think it's going to depend on the supporters. I think that there's also a skirting around the issue. For instance, somebody told me today on Facebook, I supported the war. I didn't support it being conducted like this. Okay, that's fine, but I don't know how you think you can separate your support for the war, given that it's unconstitutional, given the person conducting it, and then say, well, I didn't support this happening, when to me this was an obvious thing that was going to happen. Now, it's possible to be mistaken, and then you just say, look, I didn't think this was going to happen. I was wrong, and there's no shame in that. People are wrong. I've been wrong, and I'll be wrong again. But they pretend as if they weren't actually wrong. They acknowledge it's not going well, and they acknowledge that Trump sucks. They just don't say, you know what, I was wrong. I shouldn't have supported it. Or I think so that's what I'm really seeing, Akira. You asked me, do I think they hate Iran more than they love Israel? I don't know. I don't know. I have suspicions about why Iran is the sine qua non of enemies. I don't really want to get into it right now because there's not a lot of time. But I do think that there is a hatred for Iran. I don't know if it's more than they love Israel. I also would say I think that the love of Israel is probably exaggerated as well. I think Israel is morally superior to its enemies by orders of magnitude. I won't shy away from that. I think that it's far from an ideal country. I think it is an ally, but I don't think, how do I put it? I don't think that Israel, if you are an American, a rational American supporting capitalism, I don't think that Israel should be anywhere near your top issue. I mean, that's the best way I think that I can phrase it. So in terms of, do they hate Iran more than they love it? I don't know. It just seems to me that a lot of the folks that support the Iran war are making the same error, but directed in a different direction, that my friend Andy Bernstein makes regarding the left. Andy has correctly identified the left as an evil. That doesn't make Trump the good, and that doesn't mean supporting Trump is good. And I think that Andy's hatred for the left has blinded him to the evils of Trump. And I think that this situation, I think that these folks have hated Iran the way that Andy hates the left. They've identified an evil in Iran, but they've ignored the other side, the other consequences of supporting what they're supporting. So that's my answer to that, Akira. Let's see. Mr. Deagle says he thinks collective justice is the base of woke. The problem is, even if it is does that distinguish woke from everything else? Because remember, a definition has to be the defining characteristic is got to be that characteristic which separates that concept from everything else. So if it shares that with others, then that wouldn't be a defining characteristic. You'd have to say what is separating woke. For instance, woke is not equivalent to Marxism. Right? There may be Marxist elements within it, but it's not equivalent to it. So how would you distinguish it from Marxism? And you know, I don't know. I haven't given it a lot of thought, Mr. Deagle. All right, let me see if there's no more questions. If somebody has one, ask it. I'm going to go find your answers to the questions from yesterday. Capitalist Corner. We're up to 864 subscribers. That means 136 away from 1,000. Help us get there, folks. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers on this channel. Like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe, and then like, share, subscribe again. Because we really, really, really would like to make it to 1,000. All right, so yesterday we have 4 answers. I don't remember even what I asked. I should know. Oh, who was your favorite founding father? Greg Doherty says Ben Franklin. Akira Felix says Thomas Jefferson. Zardo Sis 2912 says Jefferson and Franklin, but then he saw a recent John Adams series and thinks he admires him more than both. Jim Valiant says Thomas Jefferson. I think that my favorite father was James Madison. The reason I like James Madison is because he moderated Jefferson's extreme idealism at times. And I think that played a very good part in shaping the country and the checks and balances, separation of power, the Bill of Rights, all of that. I mean, like one example, Jefferson went along with Thomas Paine and thought that government should be abolished every 20 years and started afresh. And I think that would be an utter disaster. So that's why I like Madison, but Jefferson's certainly up there. If you want to look at someone that's got a very interesting history, read a biography or look up Gouverneur Morris. He's a real character, real fun guy. All right, so capitalist thought of the day. Right and left are in no directions to turn. In academia, we can see that, you know, they talk about the binary. You know, you have our professors more to the left or more to the right, and it's more to the left. But even if they were more conservative, I don't think that would do much help. I'd prefer them simply more rational. If we look to the right in terms of Trump, we see the disaster in terms of growing deficits, tariffs, this war that's more and more becoming an utter failure. You look to New York and you see the woke stuff that's passing in the legislature. Again, what we need to turn to if we wish to advocate for freedom, if we wish to advocate for capitalism, is reason. Reason is the faculty, Ayn Rand says, that identifies and integrates the material provided by the senses, but I will say that reason is our means of gathering and gaining truth. And if we wish to spread truth, if we wish to communicate truth, we first have to know it. So we need to elevate reason to its proper place. All right, folks, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time today. Remember, on this very channel, Everyday Ethics will be on, 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Crime, Criminals, and Corrections will be on. I thank you all. I thank you for the super chats, super stickers. I thank you for your feedback. I thank you for your questions. And my question to you today is, for everybody, please go to YouTube and answer the question. Do you think the people who were wrong about Iran will admit it? Why or why not? Do you think the people who were wrong about Iran will admit it? Why or why not? All right, everybody, I'm out. I'll see you in a bit. Thank you so much. Until I see you again, remember, check your premises. Peace. I gotta get my finger. Peace.